Double stack 9mm guns are some of the best shooting guns because the wider grip spreads out the recoil across your palm, but the problem with that is it adds trigger reach, which makes it harder for people to get a good grip on the trigger. Walther attempted to solve this with the PDP-F, which has a shortened trigger reach, easier to rack slide, and everything else about a Walther gun that people know and love. And while the gun was initially positioned for women, it would probably be my choice amongst the PDP lineup for carry. Howdy folks, I'm David and this is the Walther PDP-F. Now, just fair warning and a disclaimer, this is a sample gun that was sent to me by Walther for review, and some of you no doubt have gotten itchy because I have called it Walther a few times now, which is closer to the correct pronunciation of Walther, but I will be calling it Walther as well, just to kind of tweak everybody with that because I just want maximum trolling. I want everybody to be irritated. So the Walther PDP-F is the reduced trigger reach version of the PDP. It takes all of the DNA of the PDP and it kind of redesigned the slide and the frame so that the frame and slide are no longer interchangeable with the regular OG PDP lineup, but they do share magazines. The magazines are common between the two platforms. If you take the slides off and look at them, the trigger bar inside the frame is different and the underside of the slide is machined, appreciably different, so that's why the slides don't fit one to another. Now, the obvious thing that is a game changer about this gun is that the trigger reach is reduced by, a quarter of an inch or so, coming from the back of the grip tang to the face of the trigger. The reason I like that, even though I have LXL hands, is I can get more of my finger onto the trigger for a more straight to the back trigger pull. I don't have to address it with more of the tip of my finger, and that feels good. It's easier to reproduce good shots as far as I'm concerned. I feel like I've got a better grip on the trigger. That coupled with the kind of flat sides, now the regular PDP sort of has these kind of finger grooves on the side panel that kind of increase trigger pull just a little bit, which actually makes the frame super shootable, but it does kind of increase the trigger reach. So the sides of the frame are basically flat like most of the other guns in the market, so it promotes a shorter reach to the trigger, so more people are going to be able to find a home on the PDP-F. But that's only half of the magic. The other half of the magic is that Walther came up with a two-piece firing pin. The two-piece firing pin allows them to use the same weight recoil spring. However, the feel when you go to rack the slide is about a 20 to 25% reduction in the force it feels required to move the slide. Now, there is an important distinction there. I said that it is easier to rack the slide. It is not easy to rack. If you're somebody with like arthritis or some kind of disability in a hand, this isn't going to be kind of the magic bullet that allows you to rack a semi-auto slide. But if you have reduced hand strength because you're smaller statured or you just simply, have willowy fingers, then you'll probably have an easier time racking the slide. Another consequence of the smaller frame is that the controls are kind of optimally situated. Now, this is true on the full-size PDP as well. This is intended to be a duty gun for smaller-handed folks. But one thing is when I shoot a lot of guns, I end up, fumbling for the slide release or the mag release a little bit as I kind of learn where they're situated. What I found with the PDP-F is that everything was exactly where I wanted it to be. There was no like, oh, I slightly missed the mag button. It was just dead nuts where my thumb wanted it to be, and it was there. So whatever engineer was involved in kind of locating all of the controls did an amazing job because it was very, very intuitive. There was no getting to know you period. So that cool two-piece firing pin kind of plays with the geometry of the PDP slide. The PDP has one of the better duty-oriented slides because it has kind of the high power cuts at the front, but also the serrations are mega usable for doing slide racking and manipulations. So the reduced feeling of racking the slide with the awesome geometry of the slide makes a gun that is very, very easy to manipulate. And one more thing about the Q4 geometry is you notice this pronounced hook at the bottom of the grip. So if you are a big-handed person, it's going to press your fingers up under the trigger guard, which makes it really feel like the gun is planted in your hand, which is a feature that is present on the Q4 SF that I dearly love as well. It's not quite as pronounced on the Q4 SF, or maybe the grip is slightly longer, but at the same time, it is appreciable. So we'll talk about the rest of the features, but first I do want to say thank you to my local supporters and my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. A tip of the hat to Global Ordnance for providing the Bellom ammunition used in the video, so thank you guys for that. And it's worth mentioning to you guys that you probably need new hearing protection, and Axle has hearing protection on sale for the month of November in 2023. So be sure to follow the link in the description to check that out. Now back to the PDP PDP-F. Now, one thing about the Walther, or am I on Walther now? Whichever one is most irritating to you, that's the one I intended to use. One thing about the Walther PDP-F right now is that just with all of the PDPs and all of the Walther pistols, they just have a very high quality feel. So whatever price point they're competing in, whether it's, you know, the 500, 550 price range or on up to like, you know, the 1500 price range for the Q4, Q5 type guns, they feel like they're higher quality than what the price reflects. And that is absolutely true of the PDP-F as well. And you really start to appreciate that when you get it like in hand and start messing with it. Like, you can hear that there is slide to frame wiggle like you would expect on a production striker fired gun, but it's not nearly as much as the other guns that it's competing with. Like, that technically doesn't really matter that much for these striker fire kinds of guns and how they do their lockup, but it just makes it feel higher quality. And the same thing with just the weighting on all of the buttons and the slide releases and stuff like that. Everything has like a positive spring tension that just makes it feel like a super high quality piece. The PDP-F is going to come with 2 back straps. What you see here is the large back strap. It doesn't really, I mean, it doesn't increase the trigger reach at all. It just kind of provides a little bit more thickness at the bottom of the grip. The grip of the PDP-F is a little bit different than the old PDP. If you look at the old PDP, there's kind of a hump at the bottom of the grip, while on the PDP-F, it's just more of a gentle slope out to a little bit of a hump. So it's not quite as exaggerated. In truth, I think I prefer the grip of the regular PDP better, but I like the trigger reach on the F better, so go figure. So the super amazing controls on the gun, let's talk about the accuracy. Now, all of the Walther pistols are super accurate. It is absolutely true. I was just absolutely amazed by the Q4 SF and the group sizing I was able to get from shooting this. And the PDP, well, when I validated that the dot was zeroed on the pistol before I started filming, this is what happened.
All right, getting this optic zeroed before we start filming. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 right there. That's a 6-shot group. So that's 4 shots with a flyer right and a flyer low where I jerked it down.
And part of the reason why the pistol is as accurate as it is shooting, you know, clover leaves at 25 yards is it has a stepped chamber. And what a stepped chamber means is the rear 3/4 of the chamber is a traditional SAMI spec, which is wide and accepts, you know, all different kinds of projectiles, but it tapers down to be more at the optimum spec, and it just forms a tighter seal and centers the bullet in the barrel a little bit nicer. Whether that's all true or not, or if it's the right thing, I have no idea. What I have noticed, and this is true using a chronograph on a couple other different Walther guns, is that the chronograph is generally more consistent. It seems to get a better seal with a wider range of ammunition, like the extreme spread from top to bottom usually isn't so extreme, but also there appears to be a slight velocity boost based on kind of the tighter confines of the chamber. Everybody always wants to talk about the triggers on the Walther guns, and that's because the triggers on the Walther guns are amazing. Now, the trigger on this example is 5.5 pounds with a little take up right to the wall. It is a very firm wall. Now, most YouTubers are going to tell you that it's a super crisp break, and that's because they're pulling the trigger fast. Just like all striker guns, there's a little bit of creep. If you pull the trigger real slow, you see that little bit of creep that I'm able to get right there? It's got a tiny little bit of creep before the release. It's not a hammer fired gun, so it's gonna have that kind of characteristic. However, you can't notice it. It absolutely, for all intents and purposes, it's absolutely amazing. It is super predictable, so it is very easy to get at that accuracy because the gun is very mechanically accurate. It's very practically accurate based upon the grip geometry, the shape of the trigger. And the trigger is kind of very broad, and it does have a trigger safety. So that 5.5 pound trigger is a really good trigger weight because it provides enough tactile feedback in like the take up to let you know that you're getting onto the trigger, and it requires enough pull that really does kind of require intention. So it is a very good trigger for a, you know, self-defense or duty style use, but it still maintains shootability when you want to be able to control it and all that kind of good stuff. So it is a very, very good trigger. The PDP-F does have the PDP 2.0 Optic Cut, and according to their website, if you buy one of these, then you can contact them through the website and they will send you one plate for the optic of your choosing. It's worth noting that the old guns, and this is one of the old guns, has the 1.0 cut, which is basically just a smooth cut in the pocket that you just put a plate in and off to the races. 2.0 does have a male-female relationship between the plate and the slide.
Got the critical duty 135 grain projectiles and critical defense light 115s. Let's see how we go with the PDP-F. We got the critical defense light. The slide rack's super easy. It's actually quite nice. All right, we'll just do that. Very easy. The ejection is very short. It's maybe 4 feet to my right. This is the heavy duty stuff. All right, this is probably gonna punch a little bit harder in my hand, so let's see what we got. Yeah, I only dropped one of those going about as fast as I can pull the trigger, but I mean, runs well. Similarly, it doesn't throw the brass very far, which is kind of surprising. But it was more direct. It definitely put more push into my hand with it, but even still, very manageable. The shape of the grip really kind of makes it nice. There's a bit of a high point sort of right there on the frame for me that keeps me from getting my thumb exactly where I want to get it. I appreciate a little bit more rounding there, but really it's quite nice.
Now, as I mentioned, the negatives on this gun, and it's super duper minor, and it's very unique to my hand and how I grip the gun. Now, I want to make the gun feel more like a hammer-fired gun, which means I like a nice V taper up under the grip tang. Because I don't have it, what ends up happening is I'm creating a hot spot sort of right there on the frame. It's not that bad. Honestly, it doesn't even really bother me. I just wish that I could seat the gun a little bit deeper into my hand if there was just a little bit more relief on this corner of the frame, which is a complaint that I had about the full-size PDP. It's not quite as noticeable with the way the grip shape is this. It's just a little bit more evident with the way that the back strap on the PDP-F sort of comes together. It's just a little high spot sort of right there. It's a very minor gripe, super duper minor. In fact, I still think it's one of the better feeling guns in the segment. The only other gripe about the pistol is the magazine cost at 40 bucks. It's a little bit pricey. I happen to think the PDP lineup is a great value, and I think that the PDP-F is a great addition to the PDP lineup because it does give something for small-handed people, which is interesting because people with small hands have generally had to settle for like the 1.5 stack or compact type grips with reduced round counts, or just, you know, generally the thinner grips that make it, you know, not as pleasant to shoot. Whereas the PDP-F, like, it feels great. It feels like a big gun because it is, you know, kind of a big gun. But it is a great pistol as far as that, especially, you know, being able to reach the trigger and just how the controls are. So Walther, your pick, did a great job with the PDP-F. And as I mentioned, if I were to pick a PDP to carry, I think that this would be the format. Now, they do have a 3.5-inch barrel version of this gun. And if I was somebody who carried out of like an outside the waistband holster and didn't want, you know, the muzzle of the gun to press down in my, like, you know, cruiser seat or something like that, then maybe the 3.5-inch barrel would be good. But as it is right now, 4-inch barrel is going to get you all the velocity of the hollow points for self-defense or duty ammunition. And as somebody who carries in an appendix, it's nice to have a little bit more weight in the pant line so that it doesn't want to flop out, and it's just more stable from an appendix inside the waistband. Walther really crushed it with the PDP-F. I think a lot of people should look past the initial female marketing of it and give it serious consideration. Just get it in your hands at the gun counter and see what you think. So if you got one, sound off in the comments. Let everybody know your experience. As always, I appreciate you guys. I'll catch you on the next one.